Rain punished the cabin roof until it seemed ready to collapse. Wind howled through the valley like a living memory, twisting the trees into frantic silhouettes. The front door hung half open, a dark wedge cutting through the light inside. On the porch, shallow prints pressed into the mud, too small for a grown dog, too fresh for a ghost. The wall clock glowed 3:17 a.m., its hands refusing to move. A single bowl lay overturned, the water within trembling to every gust. Rowan stood motionless, hearing what she hoped was the storm's shifting branches. Then came the faintest whine from the tree line, soft as a heartbeat returning after silence. It pulled the air tight around her, the night contracting to that single sound. In the next flash of lightning, the forest's mouth seemed to open wider, inviting something back that never truly left. Before the stillness, there had been a road coiling through mountains slick with rain. Headlights cut the downpour into two desperate corridors of sight. Between them, a flicker moved, too small to register as danger, until instinct forced her foot to the brake. The tire screamed against wet gravel. The beam caught a mass of black feathers surging upward, and beneath them a pale shape struggling against the floodwater's pull. The scene unfolded in fractions of seconds, wings thrashing, talons flashing, a drowned world split open. When the windshield cleared enough to show truth, Rowan saw a creature barely larger than her gloved hands, the limp form of a dog cub being torn between current and sky. The crows rose, resentful silhouettes against the thunder's light. The cub remained, motionless at first, then twitching once as if refusing extinction. The river carried leaves, sticks, and a life she refused to let drift.
Water surged past her knees, a torrent thick with silt and cold resolve. The ditch smelled of iron and moss, an old vein reopened by the storm. She moved by instinct, not calculation, each step testing how far compassion could weigh against common sense. The cub's body bobbed once, caught on a submerged branch. The crows screamed above, a dark tribunal arguing against her interference. She reached down, fingers closing around a heartbeat faint but deliberate. The fur clung to her sleeves, soaked and heavy, warmth leaking away into the current. For a moment, the world narrowed to that pulse beneath her thumb and the rain's endless percussion. She lifted the small body high, the water cascading from its matted coat, like evidence being washed clean. The crows scattered only when she climbed the embankment, their cries receding but not forgotten, their judgment postponed for another night. Back at the cabin, Dawn crawled pale and indifferent. Mud streaked the hallway where she had crossed carrying her impossible burden. The air still hummed with aftermath, electricity without a storm to spend it. Near the hearth, the same bowl she had left empty months earlier now rolled gently on its rim, guided by some unseen draft. She followed the marks leading from threshold to window, paw-shaped, erratic, proof of movement where none should exist. The curtain fluttered, though the glass remained closed. On the sill lay a feather, black, iridescent, flawless. It glinted in the weak light like a message rendered in another alphabet. The forest beyond looked calm, deceptively so. Rowan closed her eyes and felt the pattern of last night's wind replay against her skin. Somewhere beyond sight, the valley held its breath, waiting for repetition to complete the circle it had begun.
Hours became measurement rather than time. Machines whispered their steady verdicts while she watched the cub suspended between them. Each breath rasped like paper tearing. Monitors charted fragile rhythms, wires gleamed with the sheen of hope held together by precision. The clinic smelled of antiseptic and old rain tracked in from her shoes. Rowan's notes blurred, lines written in a hand too tired to trust itself. She marked temperature, hydration, heart rate, pretending science could keep emotions in check. Outside, crows nested in the oak, their silhouettes sharp against sodium light. Inside, the cub shivered despite the heat lamp's relentless glow. She adjusted settings, recorded numbers, avoided reflection. Yet when the clock reached 3:17, the monitor faltered once, a soft dip like a held breath. The moment passed, but her own pulse failed to slow. Some coincidences did not repeat, others insist until belief fractures. Morning arrived without color, only gradients of fatigue. Evelyn Pike reviewed the scans, her expression a mixture of data and disbelief. Lines on paper spoke of trauma, swelling, uncertain futures. Rowan read them too, but saw only movement, faint, stubborn. The cub slept beneath layers of sterile warmth. Around its muzzle, condensation gathered, proof of continuing negotiation with life. Outside, frost edged the clinic's windows, tracing veins like mirrored anatomy. A single crow perched beyond the glass, unmoving, studying what medicine could not explain. Rowan logged the observation, but left the description blank. She leaned back, eyes burning, and counted breaths again. By the 60th, the crow was gone. Only the print of its claws remained on the sill, perfectly aligned with her own reflection. Between science and superstition, the space for hope proved smaller than the width of that thin pane of glass.
Data files showed uninterrupted rest. Cameras disagreed. At 3:17 a.m., the cub rose within its enclosure, head lifting toward unseen sound. Lights flickered. The feed stuttered into static for 20 seconds. When the image cleared, Kiro stood facing the lens directly, eyes open, unblinking. Later review confirmed no human entry, no external trigger. Rowan replayed the footage until sunrise, memorizing every frame. The animal's stillness felt deliberate, almost communicative. She noted temperature drop, slight electromagnetic fluctuation, signs belonging to machines, not myths. Yet a feather rested inside the pen when she arrived, its black barbs perfectly dry despite the condensation everywhere else. She stored it in a specimen vial without comment. In her report, she replaced words like impossible with anomalous. Science tolerated anomalies. Belief did not. Beyond the fence, the crows had multiplied. Their calls no longer warned. They counted. Ranger Cole Ashford's arrival brought the smell of damp uniform and official time. Regulations demanded clarity. Her records offered poetry instead. The state's forms left no space for miracles. He scanned the file, eyes narrowing at blank sections where she'd omitted cause. Outside, thunder rehearsed its approach, though forecasts promised clear skies. The cub stirred within the crate, sensing tension the way wild things read air pressure. Cole's boot tapped against the tile, a metronome of bureaucracy. When he left, his shadow lingered longer than he did. Rowan remained still until the taillights disappeared. Then she opened the logbook again and crossed out subject in every line, replacing it with Kiro. Names, she thought, make survival personal. Through the open window came the rustle of feathers shifting branches. Rules waited for signatures. The living required none. Night rose like a curtain, preparing for another scene. Late evening dripped from the eaves in slow intervals. The generator hummed beneath the clinic floor, steady as a heartbeat echoing through pipes. Rowan sat beside the crate, reading figures that no longer offered comfort. The cub's pulse fluttered beneath the thin skin of its throat, fragile but rhythmic. She measured heat loss, adjusted blankets, and watched condensation bloom on the incubator walls. Somewhere deeper in the building, a fuse clicked. The lights dimmed, leaving machines glowing in their own miniature constellations. Outside, a crow thudded against the window pane, the impact sharp as punctuation. The monitor flatlined for a breath's length, then resumed its climb. She noted time, 3:17. The coincidence carved itself into her notes, underlined twice. Beyond the glass, the crow's outline lingered in frost, a silhouette frozen in accusation. She chose not to scrape it away, letting the pattern hold its silent testimony. Morning came violet and cold. The clinic smelled of disinfectant and stale coffee, the air still charged with static from the night's interruption. Rowan leaned close to the crate, the cub's chest lifted in steadier rhythm, ribs no longer trembling beneath the lamp's heat. She marked improvement, pulse consistent, respiration shallow but clean. Each exhale misted the glass, erasing frost until only clarity remained. The crows outside had gone silent, their absence more unnerving than their cries. She felt the change in the room before she saw it. The monitor's steady climb,
the tail twitching faintly against the blanket. In the hush that followed, she realized the sound she heard was not machine hum, but something softer, a vibration between relief and instinct. It filled the space, thin yet persistent, as if the fragile engine of life had decided to test its own volume again.
The hours after dawn felt oddly vacant, like a room after a concert where sound still vibrates in the furniture. The cub slept, twitching now and then as if chasing something invisible through its dreams. Rowan cleaned instruments, the small domestic acts that keep fear from multiplying. Every so often she checked the readings, though she already knew them by heart. The clinic settled into an artificial calm, punctuated by the hum of refrigeration and distant thunder rehearsing a return. On the monitor's pale glow, her reflection hovered beside Kiro's outline, two uncertain forms sharing borrowed light. Outside, wet branches swayed without wind. The silence seemed curated, deliberate. When she finally turned off the overhead lamp, the shadows did not fall as they should. They leaned, slightly, toward the crate. She made a note to replace the bulb, though part of her suspected it wasn't the bulb that had changed. Days blurred into a loop of feeding, charting, and waiting. Improvement came in increments too small for celebration, yet patterns emerged. The same hour, the same faint tremor, the same crow descending to the same branch. Rowan logged everything, though the data refused logic. When exhaustion blurred her writing, she left fingerprints on the clipboard, ghostly evidence of witness. At dusk, reflections layered themselves on the clinic glass. Forest outside, fluorescent world within, her own tired face caught between. Kiro stirred, eyes half open, scanning the air as though scenting a memory. She imagined the sound that first called her to the ditch echoing through him still, carried like a scar under skin. The crow lifted, vanished into cloud, then returned moments later with something shining in its beak. A droplet? A coin? She never discovered which, only that it fell precisely where her footprints began.
A week later, while sorting reports, Rowan found an envelope beneath her notebook. The date stamped on its corner belonged to next month. Her name appeared in handwriting too neat to be her own. Inside, a single sheet carried a short message written in her style, listing coordinates of the mountain pass and the phrase, "Return when it rains again." She folded it once, placed it back without reading a second time. Rational explanations circled her thoughts, but refused to land. The crow outside knocked twice against the window, wings beating an impatient rhythm. She filed the letter under miscellaneous and told herself fatigue breeds mischief. Yet as night deepened, the air in the hallway thickened with the smell of wet earth, the scent of beginnings. She checked the forecast, clear skies for days. Still, she dreamed of rain pounding glass and a voice she could not name counting backwards from 10. Cameras recorded everything, though memory often lies cleaner. At midnight, motion sensors caught a fluctuation in the holding room. A warm bloom appeared on the thermal display, not from the cub, but from the ceiling beam above. Rowan rewound footage 3 times before deciding error had invented it. She muted alarms, unwilling to chase anomalies she could not quantify. Kiro slept through it all, chest rising in measured defiance. Outside, the temperature dropped, fog thickening until sound dulled at its edges. When she stepped out for air, her breath mingled with the vapor, vanishing before it could form. The oak tree loomed indistinct, heavy with crows too quiet for comfort. Each stared the same direction, the clinic door. When she re-entered, warmth had returned to normal. She exhaled relief, unaware of the faint smear of soot above the beam, shaped like an open wing spread to shelter what lay below. Morning brought no rest. Footsteps patterned the mud outside the service entrance, bare, human-sized, leading only one way, inward. Locks remained untouched. Security feed showed nothing. Rowan traced the impressions to the threshold, where they ended as abruptly as they began. She measured them, photographed, archived, then erased them with her boot. Some evidence invites contagion. Inside, the cub slept soundly,
unbothered by any disturbance. Yet the room smelled faintly of ozone, a scent that did not belong to rain. She checked the time, 3:17, of course. Files on her desk shifted subtly, papers curling toward an unseen draft. The feather and its vial tilted upright, defying balance, then fell flat again as though exhaling. She tightened the lid, labeled the sample, and whispered, "Nothing." The world outside resumed ordinary noises, traffic, wind, faraway thunder, but each sounded rehearsed, an imitation of the living she no longer fully trusted. During recovery training, she built obstacles meant to test reflex and will. Kiro approached each with cautious intelligence, misjudging distances yet persisting. The pattern of his gait told a story of rewired instinct, a creature learning geometry all over again. She recorded progress, charting arcs of muscle memory. When a sudden clap of thunder shook the roof, he froze, then bolted not for shelter but for her boots, pressing close until his heartbeat steadied. The data logged as response to stimulus. Still, she knew it meant something older than conditioning. That night she reviewed footage, slowing frames until movement resembled intention. The cub's head always turned a fraction before sound arrived, as if anticipating thunder rather than reacting, predictive rather than responsive. The discovery filled her with awe and unease in equal measure. Somewhere beyond walls, wings beat against the unseen sky, marking rhythm he already seemed to know.
Electrical interference plagued the clinic for days. Computers froze mid-calculation, lights dimmed during feeding cycles. Rowan replaced outlets, checked generators, found nothing. The crow problem escalated, flocks gathering along the fence line, their eyes reflecting red warning diodes from equipment racks. She counted at least 100, all silent, their formation precise. Inside, Kiro slept through each fluctuation, tail twitching like a conductor's cue. At exactly 3:17, power blinked out entirely. Emergency backup filled the dark with amber light, casting her shadow twice across the floor. In that moment, the silence turned physical, pressing against her ears until pain bloomed. Then the hum returned, devices rebooting themselves as if nothing had happened. She opened the log to record the outage, but found the line already typed, time-stamped, initialed in her handwriting. She stared at it until dawn, knowing she had been asleep when it appeared. Weather shifted without warning. Barometers fell, birds scattered, except the crows, which clung to branches as if bracing for impact. Rowan secured equipment, aware that storms in these mountains could rewire entire landscapes. Kiro paced his pen, muscles gathering definition, eyes following her every move. The air carried metallic taste. Static lifted hairs on her arms. She remembered the letter's coordinates, somewhere upriver, near the original ditch. Against reason, she felt pulled there. When lightning finally split the horizon, its reflection etched both of them in white relief, woman and animal poised between shelter and surrender. For a heartbeat, the world stood still, noise erased by brilliance. Then came the aftershock, rattling glass, extinguishing power again. In the dark, the monitor beeped once, long and low, followed by the soft click of a latch releasing. The cage door swayed open. Wind howled approval through every corridor.
Searchlight swept the perimeter until sunrise. No breach marks, no footprints. Only the cage door ajar and the crow feather lying across its hinge. Rowan combed the woods, calling nothing, listening instead. The forest offered ordinary answers: water movement, leaf friction, the sigh of distant traffic, but none aligned with the hollow weight in her chest. Back inside, the air felt rearranged, as though furniture had shifted by degrees too small to notice. She checked the monitors, every file for the last hour corrupted into gray static. On one frame, half-formed lines suggested a shape in motion, blurred between species, neither wholly animal nor human. She stored the drive in a sealed drawer. Outside, crows reformed their chorus, each note landing precisely where the previous had fallen. The rhythm felt rehearsed, a dirge for something that hadn't yet decided whether it was gone. By afternoon, officials demanded reports, signatures, explanations. She offered geography instead, coordinates of where she would search. Rain followed her departure, though forecasts denied it existed. The road wound familiar, every bend echoing that first night's terror. She drove slower now, windows cracked to taste the air, to hear if the forest spoke his name. Puddles mirrored the sky in broken fragments, each reflecting a different angle of the same storm. When she reached the pass, crows gnawed guardrails like punctuation awaiting a sentence's end. She stopped the car, stepped into the deluge, and let the water soak through every layer. Somewhere below, the ditch still carried its river of ghosts. She listened until thunder folded over itself, then turned toward a flicker of movement in the flood's churn. Whether illusion or instinct, it was enough. She stepped forward, the current greeting her like recognition.
Rain blurred the border between earth and sky until directions ceased to matter. The mountain road twisted beneath her headlights, a ribbon of reflected lightning. Every few miles, a shape flickered at the edge of visibility, too upright for an animal, too fleeting for a man. The engine's rhythm became the only steady sound, a heartbeat she didn't trust. At the pass, fog swallowed the world whole. She stopped the car, sensing movement in the haze. A single bark cut through the storm, sharp, distant, and impossibly familiar. She called nothing, simply waited. When the fog shifted, she glimpsed a dark figure leaping the runoff, vanishing into the slope beyond. The crows descended afterward, silent, settling along the guardrail as if to witness her reaction. The rain slowed. In its fading percussion, she felt an old instinct stirring, the one that had driven her into the ditch years ago, before consequence had a name. By dawn, she reached the conservancy gates. The sign hung crooked, letters worn thin by wind. Inside, enclosures stood empty, their wire walls trembling with echoes of vanished breath. Marin Calder's office door swayed slightly, unlocked, the room beyond neat and deserted. On the desk, a single tag waited. Kiro's identification number, handwritten across an envelope. Inside, a folded map traced the perimeter of the valley with a single red circle near the creek's bend. Notes beneath read, "Transfer never completed." Her pulse quickened with equal parts fear and relief. She looked toward the largest enclosure. The gate hung ajar, soil disturbed where paws had once landed. A collar lay beside the threshold, cold metal warming instantly against her skin. The crows watched from rafters, feathers catching dawn's thin light, their eyes bright with something between pity and warning.
Electric silence filled the conservancy like an aftershock. Fluorescent lights buzzed but failed to hold steady. She moved down corridors that remembered voices but had none left. Each room contained traces of occupation, an overturned feeding dish, bedding indented as if recently vacated. At the far end, a quarantine chamber blinked with a red warning light. She entered, expecting emptiness, finding instead a faint warmth lingering in the steel cage. Her hand hovered over the latch. The air hummed against her palm, vibrations soft but insistent. On the opposite wall, condensation spelled patterns resembling numbers. She wiped them away, finding nothing beneath. When she turned, the light flickered and reset to green, systems clearing themselves as though erasing evidence. The hum subsided, replaced by distant wing beats. Outside, The flock had doubled, a black storm of waiting silhouettes. She left the chamber door open, unsure which side truly needed closing. She followed the map's markings down the valley path, boots sinking into loam saturated by weeks of rain. The forest had changed since that first night, denser, older, carrying its own pulse. The river's voice reached her before sight did, low and constant, like something rehearsing survival. When she reached the bend, the ditch appeared smaller than memory suggested, now softened by moss and time. She knelt at its edge, touching the mud, tracing faint impressions already filling with water. The crow feather she carried slipped from her pocket, landing on the surface and spinning slowly until the current claimed it. Above, branches crowded the sky, each laden with watchers. She sensed, rather than saw, the shape on the opposite bank, a brief shimmer of wet fur, a tilt of the head. Then it was gone, leaving only concentric rings widening outward, as if the river itself had sighed.
The storm returned by evening, erasing her tracks as she moved. Wind pressed rain sideways, coating her coat in silver streaks. Lightning fractured the forest into fragments, bark, stone, eyeshine, disappearance. Each flash revealed another foot of path and another absence of destination. Somewhere ahead, a low whine threaded through the thunder, leading her deeper until footing became myth. She slipped, caught herself on a root, and found the soil beneath slick with movement. Worms retreating from floodwater, life shifting downward. When she rose, a set of paw prints paralleled her own, freshly etched into the mud, each step matching pace. She followed them until they veered toward a hollow lit faintly from within. The light pulsed, steady as breath. She stepped closer, recognizing the glow of emergency equipment long since disconnected from any power grid. Its monitor flickered once, displaying a single number before fading, 317. The hollow opened like an old wound in the hillside, half collapsed, roof supported by roots and chants. Inside, the air was warm, metallic, and rhythmic, the sound of water dripping in perfect intervals. Her flashlight caught the glint of surgical steel, abandoned crates, and the shattered shell of a field incubator. She recognized the model. She'd used the same kind years earlier. Wires coiled through the soil like veins, humming faintly though no generator remained. On the ground, a blanket lay folded with obsessive precision. She unfolded it and found faint impressions, the outline of small paws pressed into the fabric, long since dried. Near the entrance, a collection of bones, rodents, birds, arranged in concentric spirals. Above them, carved into the dirt wall, a simple shape, a crow's wing spanning outward from a paw print center. The combination felt deliberate, the collaboration of two instincts once opposed.
Dusk thickened into a dart so complete that depth perception surrendered. From the trees came movement too measured for wind. She stood still, listening, the storm's residue dripping from branches in slow applause. Then, between heartbeats, eyes reflected back, amber, steady, unafraid. The shape that followed was larger than memory allowed, shoulders rolling with predatory grace, subdued by recognition. The air tightened as if the forest itself inhaled. The crows shifted above, restless but silent. She did not move, nor did he. The distance between them held years of unfinished understanding. When lightning revealed the hollow again, it stood empty. Only the prints remained, leading away toward the ridge where rain shimmered like metal. She followed until exhaustion replaced caution. Somewhere ahead, the same eyes glanced back once. Not invitation, but acknowledgement, before dissolving into the forest's black anatomy. Morning exposed tracks trampled by authority. Ranger Cole Ashford's vehicles lined the path.
Men moving through undergrowth with purpose, their radios whispering static orders. She approached unseen, observing the pattern of searchers expanding in grid formation. Cole's voice carried, steady, administrative, unaware of her proximity. They marked evidence with fluorescent tape: prints, fur, disturbed soil. From her vantage, she saw what they didn't: the trail looping back, a perfect circle intersecting itself near the creek. She understood then that pursuit would always end where it began. As the team advanced, the crows followed, adjusting formation like escorts. When one officer brushed against a branch, feathers rained down, blackening his shoulders. He froze, unsettled, then moved on. Rowan retreated deeper into shadow, content to let them chase reflections. Some creatures, she thought, cannot be captured because they never truly escaped. They simply learned to change direction faster than consequence.
The forest quieted after their departure, leaving the world suspended in a moment between decisions. She rested beside a fallen cedar, its trunk scarred by lightning long past. Beneath its bark, sap glistened like amber blood. She pressed her hand to it, grounding herself in texture, temperature, reality. Overhead, clouds thinned enough for daylight to fracture through, scattering gold across the wet canopy. Every droplet turned briefly to fire, a brief rehearsal for dawn. She thought of the clinic, of the hum that had once been proof of survival, and realized the same rhythm persisted here, faint but insistent beneath her palm. When she looked up, a crow perched above her, feathers dripping, gaze unblinking. It cawed once, softly, the sound closer to a sigh. Around its talons hung a shred of fabric torn from her old lab coat, carried here by a logic only memory could explain. She followed the ridge until the trees thinned and the valley revealed itself in fractured sunlight. From this height, the conservancy appeared as geometry, fences, corridors, containment disguised as sanctuary. Beyond it stretched the wilderness, vast and indifferent. Between them ran the river, a living fault line separating obligation from freedom. She stood on the precipice, rain drying on her face, air heavy with the scent of ozone and possibility. Somewhere below, movement rippled through the brush, the brief shimmer of fur, the promise of presence. The crows wheeled above, their cries less warning than benediction now. She realized then that rescue had never been the end but the beginning of a longer bargain. The forest waited for her choice. The path downward looked dangerous, perhaps final. Yet still she stepped forward, leaving the man-made world behind for whatever law-governed loyalty among the untamed.
Earlier, before the ridge in the hollow, the clinic held a midnight that refused to thin. Monitors mapped a fragile ascent while rain rehearsed against the gutters. At 3:17 a.m., a soft click folded into the machine hum, too polite to count as alarm. The latch on Kiro's pen hung loose, unmoving, as if gravity had changed its mind. He stood on the threshold, head lifted, eyes reflecting the red digits like twin embers. Beyond the window, crows assembled along the eave in a ruler straight line, their feathers slicked flat by mist. He stepped into the room without sound, pausing only to scent the air where her coat hung drying. The moment held the shape of a choice. He turned toward the glass, staring past his ghosted reflection to the silhouettes outside. The flock did not call, they simply watched. The incubator's heat faded behind him like a season ending. Morning dragged law through the door in the form of signatures and schedules. Ranger Cole Ashford stood at the seam where tile met mud, carrying the weight of statutes like weather that would not break. The warrant named an outcome with clean letters, as if neat handwriting could soften the story beneath it. The clinic answered with fluorescent honesty, metal carts aligned, instruments nested like bones. Kiro rested in his crate, tail still, gaze steady, the steadiness that grows from learning thresholds too early. Rowan felt time compress into decision. every hour she had borrowed demanding repayment. Outside, engines idled, radios whispered coordinates, and the crows arranged themselves into a dark arc mirroring the windshield curve of each truck. A storm gathered without clouds, built from the friction of rules and rescue. When Cole turned to confer with the others, air moved differently. The room shed its patience. Motion began.
Rain stitched the road into a single glistening thread, pulled tight between mountain and valley. The crate was belted beside her, vibration translating engine rhythms into heartbeat language. Mile markers flashed like metronomes set too fast. Headlights carved tunnels through mist, revealing fragments of guardrail, slick rock, the brief glitter of running water crossing asphalt. In the rear view, blue strobes faltered, swallowed by bends in elevation. Kiro shifted once, then steadied, breath sinking to the wiper's scythe. Every nerve registered pursuit, even when sirens did not speak. In the cabin, the air thinned to intention, a corridor narrowing toward one necessary exit. She tasted metal at the back of her throat, that old flavor of decision no training softens. On the ridge above, a black ribbon of birds unspooled with the wind, tilting as one body, drawing a moving line toward the only turn that mattered. The highway opened into a bleak plateau where fog became architecture. Visibility collapsed to a room-sized world. Then a single crow dropped into the headlight beam and held there, wings working in compact calculation, neither overtaking nor falling behind. It kept to the lane's center, a living divider guiding through white oblivion. The dashboard clock blinked the familiar number, steady and indifferent. She followed the bird as the road curved right, then right again, toward a narrow exit she would have missed in any other weather. The crow rose, circled once, and vanished into cloud as the sign appeared, a county road descending toward the Conservancy's back approach. Gravel replaced asphalt, sound changed timber, and the sense of pursuit fell back a fraction. In the side mirror, blue light diluted to pale, then disappeared entirely. Ahead, fence posts stepped out of fog like bones remembering their place.
The Conservancy service gate yawned on oiled hinges, admitting storm and trespass in equal measure. Marin Calder's crew materialized from the gray, faces washed colorless by rain, hands moving with practiced purpose. Under the overhang, the crate door swung wide. Kiro slid forward, body low, paws negotiating wet concrete, the world arriving too fast. The enclosure across from them waited with its catalog of wild approximations, logs, shade, the illusion of privacy. He moved toward it, paused, and pivoted back, closing the distance until fur pressed against denim. The gesture was brief, a single heartbeat's confession. Then he turned again, entering the pen with a limp that already belonged to memory. Around them, people stilled, recalibrating what they thought they knew about imprint and debt. Above, the crows shifted compartments within the rafters, their collective weight ticking through corrugated metal. Rain softened. Evidence arranged itself into belief. By morning, the valley exhaled steam, mist rising from the soaked earth and wavering columns. The Conservancy hummed with recovery routines, pumps, feeders, distant human chatter softened by humidity. Kiro moved through his enclosure with slow precision, each step tracing invisible diagrams into the mud. The limp had faded to memory. His movements carried the measured patience of a creature revising its boundaries. Rowan watched from the observation deck, clipboard forgotten, pen idle against her palm. The air held a fragile equilibrium, an equation balanced between captivity and freedom. Every so often Kiro paused, nostrils flaring toward the forest line where light thickened among wet trunks. The crows no longer screamed. They perched in quiet alignment, as though cataloging the new design of peace. When he finally lay down beneath the oak platform, eyes half closed, his breathing synced to the wind's slow pulse, perfectly, unnervingly deliberate.
The Conservancy settled into its daylight rhythm, but the staff moved with hushed restraint, as if afraid sound itself could disturb the fine thread tethering calm to obedience. Marin Calder joined Rowan by the fence, her voice pragmatic, her posture kind, but the meaning behind her presence unmistakable. Separation training must begin. Attachments must fade. Rowan nodded, agreement written only in silence. Through the mesh, Kiro watched them, head tilted, reading body language the way feral creatures decipher storms. His tail flicked once, not impatience, not threat, an exclamation of comprehension. When Rowan stepped back, he mirrored her, maintaining the distance they asked of him. The space between them became its own geography, filled with unsaid gratitude and ache. The air changed temperature, cooler, cleaner, final. The crows circled once above, scattering droplets of reflected light. The moment held, then folded itself away, unfinished but understood. Night brought clarity disguised as fatigue. Rain had ceased, leaving a sky scraped clean of clouds. Stars reflected in puddles across the compound's graveled path, tiny mirrors set for memory. Rowan performed her final check, sealing logs, locking gates. Every latch clicked in sequence, except one. The sound of the last lock echoed longer than it should, hollow and uncertain. She returned to confirm, finding the door to Kiro's enclosure slightly ajar, chain intact, but hook missing. Inside, bedding undisturbed, water bowl still trembling from recent movement. She traced the ground with her flashlight, paw prints leading toward the outer perimeter, disappearing at the fence where the soil turned to stone. No sign of digging, no torn mesh, only absence shaped by intention. In the distance, an owl called once, its note low and resonant, answered by silence thick enough to register as proof.
Before dawn, the valley filled with flashlights and measured orders. Tracks multiplied under boot prints, obscuring evidence even as they looked for it. Rowan moved apart from the searchers, drawn instinctively toward the creek where mist still clung low. Each step sank into the ground's memory, releasing the smell of wet leaves and iron. The current ran strong from last night's rain, smooth as muscle beneath light. Along the bank, she found the remains of a small animal, clean, deliberate, without struggle. Nearby, paw prints overlapped her own, heading upstream. The crows gathered along the opposite ridge, black commas punctuating the gray. She followed until the prints ended abruptly at the water's edge, the final impression deeper than the rest, as if the earth itself had inhaled. Across the surface, something broke, a ripple, a glint of movement, then nothing. Only the echo of running water closing the page. The Conservancy resumed order by noon, paperwork framing loss as procedure. Cole Ashford signed reports, Marin offered statistics about recapture probability, and staff dismantled unused enclosures. Rowan stayed apart, standing where the fence met the tree line. On the mesh hung a single tuft of fur, sun-bleached, tangled with thread from her own sleeve. She removed it carefully, letting the strands settle across her palm. The wind rose, catching them, scattering light through them like dust. Beyond the trees, the crows lifted again, a slow, deliberate spiral widening into the open sky. Their ascent drew her gaze upward, away from the fence, away from the absence at her feet. In that motion, she understood what release truly meant, not surrender, but acceptance of continuation. The valley exhaled, warm air meeting cooler heights. The forest swallowed its sound. Somewhere unseen, life adjusted its coordinates and kept moving forward.
By evening, the light fractured into strange colors, sunset smoldering through the smoke-gray horizon. Clouds amassed behind the ridge, not thunderheads, but a slower, deliberate formation that smelled of metal and ozone. Rowan stood on her porch, the same one where everything had begun, listening to the approaching hush that precedes heavy rain. She felt the weight of stillness, that moment when the world hesitates before deciding whether to destroy or to cleanse. The wind carried scents, wet bark, old soil, the faint musk of animal breath remembered. When the first drops fell, they were large and widely spaced, hitting the roof like the measured count of a heartbeat restarting.
Lightning flickered behind the tree line, showing for an instant the crows gathering along the branches, silent, wings half raised. Between the flashes, she could swear the forest moved, contracting and breathing, as if it too prepared to speak again in storm. The house lost power soon after darkness closed. The radio, forgotten on the counter, crackled to life on its own, snatches of static, then a frequency settling into slow, rhythmic pulses. Each gap between them measured exactly 2 seconds. She counted, more out of reflex than curiosity, until the pattern steadied into a message she couldn't translate but recognized as deliberate. Outside, the rain intensified, drumming coded insistence against the windows. She found her flashlight and aimed it at the yard. The beam fractured through water into a lattice of white motion. Then the sound shifted, a single low bark woven beneath the static, unmistakable and close. Her throat tightened. The radio cut to silence. In its absence, she heard only the wet breathing of the storm and the occasional brush of wings against glass, like fingers tapping to remind her the moment demanded witness, not disbelief.
The wind slackened without warning, rain thinning to mist. In that shallow quiet, she saw movement at the tree line, first the sway of undergrowth, then the definite shape of a body emerging. Kiro stood at the border of light, larger now, coat darkened by weather, eyes burning with impossible calm. He did not approach, he merely held her gaze. Between them hung the thin barrier of rainfall, silver strands separating what could return and what must remain untamed. Behind him, the crows settled into branches, their arrangement precise, like guardians concluding a task. Rowan's pulse beat heavy enough to fill the silence. The dog turned his head slightly, acknowledging some unseen signal, then looked back once more. In the reflection of his eyes, lightning divided the sky. When it faded, he was gone. Only Prince remained, already dissolving under the next wave of rain, reclaiming the soil. Morning light slanted weakly through torn clouds. The yard glistened with scattered leaves and debris from the storm. Near the porch steps, she found a small object placed with careful intent, a feather twisted around a length of dried grass, secured by a thin fur of fur. Its simplicity disarmed her. She knelt, tracing its construction, noting the precision impossible for wind to manage. It was both token and translation, a message composed in the only language the wild might trust her to read. She placed it inside an empty jar on her windowsill, where it caught the rising light, the feather's black surface flashing blue-green for a heartbeat before dulling again. Outside, the forest remained quiet, saturated with renewal. The world had offered her a sentence. She wasn't certain yet if it was apology, farewell, or something older that existed beyond human grammar altogether.
Days stretched cleanly after the storm, unpunctuated by event or voice. The air lost its tension. Even the crows dispersed, returning to ordinary patterns. Rowan resumed her routines, clinic visits, field reports, the slow recalibration of a life resettling into structure. Yet each night, precisely at 3:17, she woke without reason, heartbeat aligned to some echo she could not silence. She would sit at the window, watching fog roll through the valley, half expecting a silhouette to step from its folds. It never did. Still, she left the porch lamp burning, its circle of light marking invitation or memorial, she no longer knew which. On the desk lay the jar with its impossible token. Under moonlight, it cast a faint shadow shaped not like a feather or a leaf, but a paw. She smiled despite the ache, understanding that certain absences choose to remain visible forever. When the first frost came, it carried the hush of sealed intentions. grass stiffened under her boots, each step cracking a thin skin of ice. The forest wore winter's unfinished mask, outlines blurred, colors reduced to the shades between steel and ash. Near the creek, she noticed impressions pressed into the frozen ground, pairs of paw marks following the contour of her earlier trails. They were faint, already melting under the morning's weak sun. She crouched, tracing their depth with a gloved finger, estimating weight, stride, memory. Nothing followed them, no companion prints, no scavenger sign, just the path of something alone, moving with certainty. Overhead, a single crow flapped lazily across the white sky, its shadow briefly intersecting the prints like a signature on water. She stood and let the silence resume its dominion. The frost would cover everything by noon, but for now, the evidence still breathed.
Months later, she stood before a hall of strangers. Screens glowed behind her, graphs replacing confession. The topic was cross-species trauma bonding. The tone remained clinical. Yet, in the shifting lights, the image of a blurred animal filled the projection. Muscles coiled, eyes twin mirrors of flame. She spoke of attachment, neural feedback, trust that erases instinct, words polished smooth from repetition. But as she described the subject's final behavior, her voice thinned, almost breaking. Audience members leaned forward, notebooks suspended mid-air. In the silence between sentences, she heard faint static from the microphone, a pulse like remembered breathing. She steadied herself, concluding with data, percentages, professional closure. Applause rose polite and brief. When the lights came up, the screen still flickered, one frame refusing to fade, a single feather caught mid-fall. She watched it until the projector shut itself off, leaving only her shadow against the blank wall. At home, a small envelope waited on her doorstep, the paper warped by moisture but intact. No name, no return address. She hesitated before opening it. Inside lay a strip of photographic film, 5 frames in sequence, dark but legible under light. The first showed forest under heavy snow, the second a blurred shape mid-leap, the third eye shine reflecting from low branches, the fourth an empty slope, and the last an outstretched wing dropping something small to the ground. She held it against the window. Outside, daylight refracted through the film, projecting inverted ghosts across her floor. The images felt recent, impossibly so. She slipped the strip into an envelope marked "Unclassified Evidence" and filed it away. That night, the wind rose again, shuddering through the chimney. In its rhythm, she imagined footsteps returning down the ridge, pacing out an old story, one measured step at a time.
Spring thaw revealed what winter had hidden. Near the oak above the Conservancy's trail, the snow melted first, uncovering a scatter of feathers layered like fallen leaves. Not crow alone, varied, mismatched, each bearing faint burn marks at the tips. Rowan approached slowly, the air warm and oddly scentless. Beneath the feathers, earth had been turned, a shallow depression ringed with smooth stones. In its center lay a single tuft of coarse fur bound by vine. It looked ceremonial, accidental, or both. She did not touch it. The crows returned at dusk, silent, landing in concentric rings around the site. None moved closer. When she finally stepped back, the wind lifted the outermost feathers, carrying them toward the valley in a slow spiral. She watched until the pattern blurred into distance, realizing she had just witnessed something that did not require her understanding, only her respect. Summer returned without thunder, only a humidity that softened the outlines of memory. The hills breathed green again,
the conservancy repopulated with new rescues: foxes, hawks, cautious deer. Rowan moved through routine as though walking inside a photograph, aware of life but untouched by its immediacy. One evening, while checking the boundary fence, she paused at the clearing overlooking the valley. The air shimmered with insects. The horizon burned gold. Then, faint but undeniable, a bark echoed from the far slope. Deep, resonant, carried by distance, yet close enough to raise the small hairs on her neck. She turned toward it, scanning tree lines until everything blurred into the same trembling light. The sound came once more, then silence. Behind her, crows erupted upward, their flight tracing a spiral that opened directly above her head. She exhaled and smiled, realizing the story had never truly stopped telling itself.
Mist crept along the ground at dawn, wrapping the fences in silver vapor. The conservancy stirred with small noises, doors sliding open, feeding buckets rattling, the rustle of feathers and fur returning to movement. Rowan moved through it like a figure remembered by routine rather than necessity. The younger interns whispered stories about her, none entirely true, each missing the silence she carried. At the education enclosure, a new litter of fox kits waited in their nest box, eyes barely open. One, the smallest, pressed its paw against her wrist while she recorded weights. The pulse beneath its skin matched a rhythm she hadn't heard in years. She smiled without meaning to. Outside, the crows gathered but did not interfere. Their calls blended with the machinery's hum, making music too low for language. In that harmony, she sensed something old resuming its shape, careful, patient, unending. In her office, the trail camera image hung opposite the desk, framed behind glass. Sunlight struck it differently each season, altering the tones until even memory felt fluid. Today, the photo caught the morning glare, revealing faint details she had not noticed before. A shadow behind the main figure, elongated, winged, part reflection, part anomaly. She moved closer, trying to decide if it was artifact or addition. The longer she looked, the more the distinction blurred. Her own reflection joined the shapes in the glass until the room became layered, a present folded over its ghosts. The interns walked past outside, laughter light, unknowing. She let the image return to stillness. The surface cooled under her fingers. Some things, she thought, aren't meant to be verified, only observed until they choose to reveal what kind of truth they hold.
That afternoon, a child visiting with a school group left a drawing on her desk. Crayon lines formed a forest, a storm, a woman, and beside her, a dog with one golden eye. The handwriting beneath read simply, "He's watching." Rowan asked around. No one remembered the child delivering it. The paper smelled faintly of wood smoke and rain, as though it had been carried through open air rather than packed in the backpack. She pinned it near the door, among permits and schedules, an unintentional shrine of color against bureaucracy. As evening arrived, shadows from the window stretched across the drawing, the crayon eyes glowing under the orange light. She turned off the lamp to leave, but the outline lingered, phosphorescent, visible even in dark. She stood for a while, unsure whether to feel comforted or commanded by the persistence of its small luminous presence. Autumn came quietly, leaves bruising from green to rust. She spent mornings walking the fence lines, afternoons cataloging recoveries, nights reading notes that never aged. Each year she performed the same gesture, scattering peanuts at the far edge of the property, and offering to crows and coincidence alike. They accepted without ceremony, descending in a black drift that moved like smoke, each bird taking exactly one before vanishing into trees. This year she added something new. A tuft of her own hair wrapped in twine, a trade for balance, a small acknowledgement of debt. When she returned at dusk, the ground lay bare, undisturbed, no trace of offering or visitor, only a single claw mark scored into the soil,
too deep for a bird, too deliberate for wind. She left it uncovered, allowing rain to fill it, believing water might remember what earth forgets. On the anniversary of that first night, thunder rolled over the mountains again, not violent, but ceremonial. Rowan walked to the old culvert, flashlight cutting through sheets of rain. The ditch was smaller now, half filled with stones and moss, the current subdued. She knelt, touching the water, feeling its cold resilience. Lightning revealed the landscape as negative, everything reversed for a heartbeat, then returned to color. Beneath the thunder's tail came a single, sharp bark from somewhere up the slope. She waited, the beam of light trembling in her hand. Between gusts, she caught the glint of two eyes watching, calm and distant. When she blinked, they were gone, replaced by darkness and the soft insistence of rain. She whispered nothing, only let the sound of the storm complete the sentence that had begun years ago, a promise spoken in weather instead of words. Morning revealed calm in the storm's aftermath. The valley glistened under low clouds, each blade of grass jeweled with dew. Near the old culvert, a circle of black feathers lay pressed into the earth, arranged too evenly for chance. At its center rested a stone smoothed by the river, marked with faint parallel grooves like scratches or script. Rowan crouched, tracing them lightly. They seemed almost symmetrical, one line curving, one ending abruptly. She recognized the pattern, but not the language. Around her, the forest felt watchful, breath held between departure and return. A crow landed nearby, head tilted, eyes unreadable. It pecked once at the soil, then lifted, scattering the circle so no arrangement remained. She understood the gesture as punctuation. The story was shifting registers again. She stood, wiped her hand clean, and followed the river upstream, where sound began to resemble a heartbeat renewed.
The Conservancy kept its records underground, climate-controlled and silent. She descended the metal stairs, the air cooling with each step. The shelves smelled of paper, dust, and something mineral, knowledge petrified over time. She found Kiro's folder among the early cases, medical notes, photographs, clipped reports yellowed at the edges. At the back was a data card labeled Audio, Field Recovery. She played it. Static filled the room, followed by rain. Then her own voice from years before, narrating vitals. At the end came a faint sound that froze her, the soft rhythm of breathing not hers, then a bark, low and certain. The recording ended mid-pulse. She rewound twice, listening again. The sound remained identical each time, unaged. She replaced the card, locked the drawer, and climbed the stairs into sunlight that now felt strangely new, as though she had surfaced from water, carrying an echo that still dripped. At dusk, she passed the observation corridor, its long windows reflecting the sky's slow collapse into indigo. Beyond the fence, fog curled along the riverbank. For a moment, she saw movement, a figure running parallel to her, pacing the same rhythm. She stopped. The reflection did not. It continued a few steps further before fading into the distance of its own choosing. The glass cooled under her palm, misting with her breath. Beneath that thin frost, she caught the outline again, clearer now. An animal pausing to look back, eyes level with hers. Lightning blinked once behind it, and the shape dissolved. When she turned toward the actual field, nothing remained but grass bending under wind. She stood there until the fog closed like a curtain. Inside the corridor, the windows returned to plain transparency, yet she could still feel warmth lingering where the vision had passed.
Weeks later, winter reclaimed the valley. Snow powdered the rooftops, and the trees stood skeletal against a gray horizon. Rowan walked the boundary path one last time before season's closure. The air held no sound until a single crow descended, landing on the fence post beside her. Its feathers shone blue under thin sunlight. It regarded her calmly, then dropped an object from its beak, a small stone wrapped in a strand of pale fur. It balanced for a second before rolling into her palm. She felt its weight, surprising for its size, and realized the grooves carved into it matched the pattern from the culvert. When she looked up, the crow was gone, replaced by a widening silence that felt like release. She pocketed the stone without question. Some gifts, she knew, were not for understanding, but for carrying, reminders of the bridge between mercy and wilderness. That night, she left the porch lamp burning, same ritual, same hour. The wind moved gently through the valley, bringing scents of frost and pine. At exactly 3:17 a.m., the bulb flickered once. Beyond the yard, something answered. A bark, clear and deep, carried by distance, yet unbroken by echo. She rose, stepping to the door, hand resting on the frame. The forest shimmered with faint luminescence, as if each raindrop remembered lightning. For an instant, eyes glowed among the trees, then dimmed into night. The sound came once more, softer now, like breath. The crows stirred in their branches, but did not cry out. She switched off the light and stood in the darkness, listening to the valley breathe. In that measured quiet, love and wilderness aligned, and the story that had begun in rain finally found its pause. Not an ending, only a long exhale into forever.